All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to my fifth LinkedIn Live session. And today is a little bit different than the first fall. Because the first fall was specifically around HR and technology. And today I've taken a slightly larger topic, which is all around which fits with one of my key drivers to help progress leaders in business. And specifically today, we're going to talk about female leaders in technology and how we can help empower female leaders to drive technology forward. And for that, I've got two amazing guests. I've got, let me just put you on board. There you are. Hi there.
Hi.
I've got Notando and Janara as my guests for today. Notando is in Johannesburg.
Yes,
How are things in Johannesburg, in South Africa? How are things in South Africa at the moment, Notando? Is it everything in lockdown or is slowly opening up?
Slowly opening up, but a lot of us are still very much still working from home. So yeah, it's slowly opening up, but yeah, we are enjoying the working from home.
Well, let me first. Notando is the co-founder and the chairperson of the Tech and Heals Foundation, and I mentioned to her in our introductory chat that I love the name of her foundation, and obviously that is there to build a generation of young women across South Africa in the technology space. Yes. Also with us is Janara. Janara, how is Karachi at the moment? Is the lockdown still in place?
Well, it's supposed to be, but I don't think anybody's listening.
I think it's typical Pakistani. We hear that we are easing the lockdown, but we don't listen to the rules that we have to play with, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. No, it's terrible how people are taking it so lightly. One doesn't know what's going to happen. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Indeed, fingers crossed. Well, Janara is the president of the Pakistani Software House Association and also the founder of the Nest.io. And I think in Pakistan, you are certainly being seen as one of the leading voices in the technology sector, specifically as a driver of incubators and accelerators in Pakistan. Welcome to the LinkedIn Live session, Janara.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
Janara, I'm not going to ask you for how long, but how did you end up in tech?
It was not something that I thought of doing, because when I entered tech, at that time there were no computer science programs. I was living in Hong Kong. I just liked technology and started using it. I used it more for communication and as part of my business. And then suddenly, once I moved back to Karachi, I saw the opportunity, and together with a couple of friends, we decided to start a company and start offering those services to businesses that were non-tech, to show them how they could market and promote themselves using technology that was already available. And so that was my entry into tech. My background is actually not tech.
So what is your background, Janara? What did you study, or what?
I studied mathematics and I studied economics and literature. But technology I think it's misunderstood, because technology is very empowering. You don't have to be a coder to be in the field of technology. There are so many areas of technology, whether it's content, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's design, user experience. It's such a vast field. So I think you don't necessarily have to be a coder, but yes, we need good programmers as well in order to make sure that things work the way they're supposed to.
Let me ask Notando. Notando, how did you end up in tech?
So for me, how I ended up in tech is that when I was younger, I used to, whenever we had school holidays, I used to go with my dad to his office. And every time I went to his office, he'd always just give me a computer and just let me do my own thing. So I used to see this lady that used to come in. So every time there was a problem with the network, there was a problem with somebody's trying to print, it's not working, they used to call her. And I started to wonder, what does she do? Because she seems like a superwoman, because when she arrives, things move. There's problems that are being solved. So I started to ask my dad, I'm like, what does she do? And then my dad told me that she's the IT lady. So I then approached her and I was like, can I shadow you for the day and see what you actually do? And that's when I followed her around, because she was the IT lady for the entire office park. So I would follow her around, see what she actually does. And I think for me, that's when I was like, I like this. I like working with computers. I like that you get there and you're actually solving a problem. And so I think that's where, for me, I started to research and find out more what it is being in IT. What does it actually entail? And that's why I found out that it's also vast. It's diverse. There's so many things that you can get into, that you can find yourself doing in tech. And I think that's where my passion for tech started. It started just being a person who can be called to fix a problem. And it sort of shaped my way all the way to varsity, shaped my way in just in my career as well, is that you're part of solving some form of problem. So yeah, that's how I in tech.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But were there many of your friends, of your female friends, that were doing similar tech roles, or were you one of the few that went into this area?
So for me, when I started in varsity, there was a lot of us who were females who were doing something in tech, but I don't think that the direction, that the conventional direction of coding and being in systems, that there wasn't so many females in that field. So I've always had to look for other people who would want to get involved in the programming side, the coding side. And I think there's not many women who are actually represented there, because a lot of us had to look up to men who were already doing that. So there wasn't actually presentation of saying that, oh, here's a female who's actually doing this, let me go and find out how are her challenges. I think most of us who are in this field, a lot of our challenges and everything that we come across, it's always a firsthand, because you sort of become you sort of write your own narrative for females, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
I can see that. Oh, absolutely. But for you, Janara, what has been your biggest challenge, or what do you see for many other females that are entering the technology space? What do you see as the biggest challenge of having a career in technology?
So the biggest challenge, of course, is that there are not sufficient role models. So, so it's very difficult to see whether this is a career they should take. There's also people at university, professors, many of them, who are actually going out and discouraging women from taking up technology as a subject, because they say, you will never, do anything in the professional field. You're just wasting our time. And this is something I've heard from many young women who are studying in the technology field, that, look, we're not encouraged, we're not given really good research projects to do, we're not given as much time as our male colleagues are. And then when they go into the technology field, many of the companies are not paying them as much as they are paying male colleagues. They are not taking them as seriously. They're not offering them the kind of training and development that they are offering to the men. And I'm not saying that they should ignore the men. I think it should be very balanced. And I think it should be according to the talents of the individual. So many of the young girls feel that they are not getting the kind of opportunities that they should be getting, because some of them feel that they are much more talented than their male colleagues. But it is often assumed, Paul, just let me finish this thread, that if you're a woman, you will not want to travel, that your family would not allow you to do it. Nobody is asked, hey, do you want to? It's assumed that because you're a woman living in Pakistan, you must be conservative and you will not want that opportunity. I think one should never assume. One should never assume.
Yeah.
Ask, don't assume is the
yeah.
Go on, Natanda.
Now, if I can add to what Jenna said, sometimes if you break through and you find yourself in actually a role where you're working with the men, sometimes you sort of given to support what the men are actually doing. Your voice is not heard in a lot of these projects. So a lot of the times you've got the skills, you've got the confidence, but when you have to chime in on projects, you have to chime in and actually bring about your skills. They're sometimes questioned. And we always sort of have to play the submissive role because that's how we are seen as women. We need to be submissive. And a lot of the times you have to learn how to be firm. And sometimes if you're too firm, it's you're labeled as something else. So our standards that we are held against are always different because I've had challenges where I've been on projects and I've had males who were below me, but they were always held at a higher rank than me. You know, if, for example, I was working with a director and the director's PA is not there and it's just males and I'm the only female, it'd be like, Nothando, take notes. And this is somebody who is you're part of the project, you're a lead on that project, but because I'm the only woman there, then I need to take the notes. So a lot of times it's also trying to not say it's trying to say respect who I am because I'm here based on merit and I know what I'm doing. I have the skills. But I think sometimes we have to always fight that women need to know their roles. And I think that it really has because we feel that if this is the environment that I'm in, how will I thrive if I have to constantly be fighting stereotypes when I also need to be actually focusing on the work?
So, but neither of you seem to me as very submissive types. So I presume that.
Actually, I'm very submissive. I'm a very shy person. I'm introvert, honestly, Paul. But you have to build this confidence within yourself, so that to the outside world you look more confident than you actually are. Because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you. So a lot of people think that we're very aggressive and very confident women, and yes, we are confident in our ability and in our role, but very often we are unsure of how the world is going to treat us. And so we have to look more powerful, more confident, so as to negate that part of the world that we're going to come across. So I don't know about Nothanda, but she seems confident. I don't know if she's submissive or an introvert, but I certainly am. And I know it doesn't come across like that, but that's the way it is.
I'm definitely an introvert, but I think the industry has made me a little bit firmer and a little bit harder because it's always based on trial and error, where when you come in and you're sort of reserved, then you're taken for granted, right? So as the experiences that have shaped me made me be confident, because I knew that in order to actually earn my place, I need my voice to be heard. And sometimes it's coming across as being aggressive, whereas my male counterparts, they would say they are confident but I'm aggressive, So I'm okay with being labeled as aggressive if that means I need to represent something that someone else can look at and be like, you know what? Maybe I need to be confident like that in order to actually get my place and be given the merit that I deserve.
Yeah. Okay. How different do you think is it in tech versus other functions? Because some of the things, of course, that you've mentioned, I'm sure female professionals will see it in other functions as well. The pay inequality, the different standards to which you're being held account for. Is it more pronounced in the technology sphere, or is it very similar in your view?
So I think, so I think as we are growing up, very often our parents, grandparents, family, friends have all sort of boxed us into, these fields are better for women. So healthcare, education, art, things like that. And science and technology is basically more they say it's more conducive for men. And so you grow up feeling that way. Although my parents didn't do that, but I know most parents feel that this is more, this is better for girls. So
Yeah.
when you grow up thinking that, it's more of a fight to get into a technology career. And as I said, there are not enough role models. You don't know whether you're doing the right thing. You're not getting the right mentoring and advice through your college years or your university years. And you don't know if, in fact, technology is the field you want to be. You don't want to be seen as a geek, those kind of things. It's looked at as being not a girl's career.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's harder. And also, when you get into the professional field, there are not enough women team leads, not enough women in management, in leadership. So you don't have people to look up to or go to for advice. So I think that's where the problem is. Because in healthcare, you see there are a lot more women. Now in media, there are a lot of women. In education, there are a lot of women. So that problem doesn't arise as much, although there are still a lot of issues. But in tech, I think, and in STEM fields, it is a lot more.
So what is the status of women in tech in South Africa and or in Pakistan? Natando, what is the percentage of females in the technology space?
So there's about 23% of women who are actually in tech here in South Africa. And of that 23%, a very small margin actually hold like leadership roles and decision-making roles. And so it's very misrepresented. Like there's not enough inclusivity of women, right? So it's even in situations where if you have to think of a programmer, there's a certain image that you have of how a programmer looks like, and a programmer doesn't look like me. And if you have to tell another person that I can actually code, I can actually develop something, they'll be like, really, And I've had an opportunity once to be part of a project where there was just a bunch of male programmers, and I think there were 2 or 3 female programmers. And a lot of the times, it was like we had to keep fighting to be heard, fighting to say that what I actually produce is good work, And I think that having to deal with something like that where you are so misrepresented, if somebody had to walk into the room that we were all busy developing, I think they would be like, okay, maybe she's just a business analyst. She writes the spec to say that this is what needs to be coded. But they don't necessarily say, could she be a developer? And I think that's the huge misrepresentation we have in our country as well.
Yeah, Nara, what is the status of women in tech in Pakistan?
It's not good. So we have maybe 15 to 18% women in tech, and that's a very, very small number. And there are even less in senior positions. Most of the women in tech companies are in the UX, UI, maybe HR, design, but not enough in programming. And I think there are multiple reasons for that, because companies are not prepared to make the adjustments that are necessary to keep their female programmers or software engineers within the companies for a longer period. First of all, they are hesitant to employ them because they feel, these women will leave, they will get married. If they're young women, they will get married, they will have families, so they will not be as loyal to the company. Better to employ a man.
Yeah.
And that's not true, because men jump roles from one company to another very often, whereas women, if they like the environment and the culture and the work that they're doing, they're excited by it, they stick to a company. All you have to do is make sure that the adjustments in the company culture are made, that the flexibility is provided, and that women feel that this is a company that they want to stay with. So that takes work. It's not, okay, let's just do what everybody else is doing. And I think not enough work is being put in, although there are some companies who have taken the trouble to do that, and they've been able to not only employ a lot of women, but retain them over a long period of time.
Natando, can you give me an example of a company in South Africa that has been very successful in specifically the programming and application side to employ and retain women? What have they done differently?
Ooh. Yo,
Hard to know example.
to think of that. um, it's quite difficult because I think a lot of the companies in South Africa, what they're doing right now is that they're trying to change infrastructure to include more technology and to start catering to the more fourth industrial revolution type of technologies. And I think that there's a lot of focus in that, but not so much focus in the changing of the different types of policies that will actually empower women. Because if you're going to bring in new infrastructure, you're going to bring in new technology. If you're still a company that is failing to see inclusivity, you're still going to leave women out. Because I think the problem is we need to not only just address the types of technologies we're using, but we also need to address that inclusivity conversation. And I think that right now, some companies, yes, are still trying to bridge the gap. They're trying to add more programs where there's women that can get involved, woman-driven type of solutions. Because I feel that sometimes when just men get into a room and be like, okay, what can we do for women? But there's not even a single woman voice in there who can actually help them implement something that is conducive for us women. So I think that we're slowly getting there. Because we are actually starting to have the conversations, but a lot of them, like these type of conversations, are held because women themselves are actually now starting to stand up because they see that, okay, we can't just leave everything to the men to decide that now we need to include women, but now there's also women who are actively out there making these conversations, which now land in the right decision makers. If you know what I mean, they land in the right rooms that can actually start being discussed, so that when actually we're starting to look at how can we change the face of tech, they can now start including those cries that we women have to say that, for example, I've been interviewed and a lot of times I get asked, do I have a family and what's the status of, am I thinking of having children? And I don't know if those are conversations that men actually get asked. And
No,
most
they don't. I promise you they don't.
so when I get asked that, sometimes, I'm like, okay, do I have to answer that? Because I feel that if I'm here, you able to ask me what are my skills, what can I bring to the table? That's what's important. Whether I have a child running and causing chaos, that's my problem. But what's important is the skills and what I bring to the table. And I think that if we can do away with a lot of those type of questions where we ask women, will they have enough time to put in late hours, and will we have enough time if we've got kids? And I think those type of conversations, men need to stop asking us that. If we're in this field, we already know what we need to do our best. And I think women are such superheroes, There's no need to ask me if I have a partner and if my partner gets sick, will I take sick leave and all of that. I mean, hire me based on what I can bring to the table. Everything else, trust me, I can handle it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yay, absolutely. Janara, you do a lot of incubators. I presume that is also specifically around young people coming directly from university. Do you see a different mindset there, and do you see more females there coming through the ranks than in the traditional software houses?
So I've seen some changes in software companies now. There are even companies that are working in the areas of game development where I see an equal number of women being employed, which was never the case before. And in product companies where they see that many of the product development team leads are women. So this is beginning to happen. And as it happens more and more, those women then employ other women who are software engineers. And so that is making things a little better. As far as incubators and accelerators are concerned, my experience is that when I started the Nest.io 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, in our first cohort, we only had one woman-led company, and that upset me a great deal because I said, hey, where are all the women? Knowing how many talented women existed. And so I went out to the universities, I went out to all the events that were taking place, and I spoke about this. And now, ever since the third cohort or so, we've had at least 40-50% women, sometimes even more. So that has improved because women have been asked, hey, why aren't you starting companies? If you start companies, maybe the culture in those companies, the ability for more women to join will be higher. You will not be dependent on companies that have been set up by men, although you should also be a part of those companies. But you should also start your own. So I've seen that happen. And Paul, actually, many of these founders, some of them are coming direct from universities, but some of them are leaving professions and are maturer. So they're in their early 30s and they're coming and starting companies. So we see some of that happening as well. And young women, especially.
Sorry, do you have any indication in terms of success ratio between female-led incubators and male-led incubators?
So I think there is no difference. It depends on the talent of the individual. I have not seen it divided by gender. I've seen some really super talented men and some really amazing women who have started companies. What we help them and what we help them with and how we facilitate them, how we connect them to the right mentors and the resources we provide them, then results in whether they are successful or not. And of course, on the idea, the market, the product market fit, everything has a role to play. But I don't think it has to do with gender at all. I never have thought that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. You just answered the question of Kessa Nassim, who asked whether there's been a difference from now and 10 years ago. And I clearly hear that there has been a difference over the last 10 years, Janara. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Let me ask Notondo that question. Let me ask Notondo that question in terms of South Africa. Have you seen any movement, Notondo, in terms of the ability, the empowerment of females and female leaders in technology in South Africa?
Yeah, I think when I have to look back, when I got intrigued about the tech industry, the type of role models that I was looking at were mostly males. So I think now there is a lot more women who have actually stood up and have either started their own tech businesses or even women who have been put in leadership positions as well. Even though it is a small minority, they still, at least there's something that you can say that something is being done. I do see women who are leading. I do see some women startup companies. So it's definitely changed, and it's based on women actually taking the stand and standing up for what they believe in. So there's definitely a huge difference. There's a lot more right now that if, for example, my niece were to search and see in my country who's in tech, a female in tech, she has a better representation versus when I when I was starting up. So definitely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's at least that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah,
and Paul, I think one of the things is that women actually don't make a whole hue and cry saying, hey, I'm here and I'm successful and I'm a great programmer and all of that. So sometimes they're not visible. And what we have started to do, several of us, is that we've started to make a list and started tweeting or, making sure that people know, hey, this woman, because when people have conferences, they have events, there are so few women. And then when we ask them, they say, oh, well, there aren't any. And then I sort of make a list and say, hey, what about this person, that person, that person, that person? Then they're embarrassed. And there are several people who are doing this now, putting together a list of women in every field who are available to speak, to participate, and all of that. And I think that is making a difference because women are not concerned about the publicity. They are concerned about their work and the problems that they are solving. So I think that is another reason that women are sort of sometimes seen to be invisible.
Yeah.
It's just a thought, because there is of course an opportunity to have for a female coder, a female graphics designer, etc., to grow into a leadership role. you don't have the specific coding background, Janara. Is it possible to bring in female leaders from other functions and actually make sure that and appoint them as CIO or CTO in order for them to drive that transition? Is that possible?
So not as CIOs and CTOs, because they would have to know enough about technology to be able to guide or supervise teams, right? But yes, in leadership positions, like I was CEO of a tech company myself, and the only reason I knew about tech was because I started experimenting with coding. I liked coding. I just didn't have a career in it. And I also understood what technology was able to do. So nobody could sort of say, oh, no, but this can't be done because it's just not technically possible. And that kind of thing you need to be able to do. So I think CTO, CIO needs to be somebody who has studied technology. And I think there are enough women who have now to be able to provide those kind of positions for them. But in every other area, I mean, there are women available. And a lot of companies now say that what they need is women with different skill sets, different domain expertise, user experience, how customers are going to interact with the product. All of that is extremely important. And so I think having them in tech companies is extremely important.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Can I've read some research there. There's quite a bit of research being done, of course, similarly on the diversity and inclusion bits around females and technology. PwC did some research that less than 25% of women in tech are only 25%. They suggested 4 actions, and I'm going to ask you, if you have to choose one of those 4, which one do you think tech companies should focus on? So the first one is, they said that the tech companies should should take a much greater role in making technology and coding interesting for women. Second one is to give them access to technology careers. Third one is around role models. And the fourth one is around inclusive workspaces, whether it's to do with bias, whether it's to do with some of the mindset elements that we've mentioned, and the inclusion part in the workspace. If you have to pick one out of 4, and obviously you say all 4 would be good, but if it was up to you, which one would you select? So
all 4 would be good. You're right, but I would select inclusivity and making sure that workspaces, because everything else women are able to do themselves. It's just that they need to make sure that there is no bias in the workplace.
Yeah.
And if that happens, you will see so many more women actually opting for tech careers and staying in those kind of companies where biases don't exist.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Notando, what's your view?
I totally agree, because if you create an inclusive space, all the other areas that you've listed will become automatic. If you make the space inclusive, you'll create careers that women can actually occupy in tech. And if you create those spaces, you're also able to get more women involved, hence having the role models there. So if we do away with a lot of the biases, we do away a lot of these environments that are sort of not designed for us women to effectively, progress. If we do away with all of that, we can actually, all those other things can become encompassed on all of that. So it's first dealing with the environments, it's dealing with all those biases, and then everything else can fall into place.
Yeah, I got you. But those biases, those are probably also the most difficult to address, isn't it? At least in my experience, being in HR for so long, that mindset and those biases is probably the most difficult one to resolve.
Yeah.
And certainly, if you get 10 guys in the room and you ask them to have a female coder amongst them, it's not going to work just like that, is it? So what advice could you give to my tech development team in order to be much more receptive and embracing their female colleagues in their teams?
So
Nintendo, let me start with you.
Okay. Start.
Sorry, Anara.
No.
So I think what's important is that if we do away with you thinking of me as a female programmer or a female developer, why don't you just think of me as a developer? Why don't you just think of me as a programmer? And I think that's where a lot of these biases come from, where you have to say a female programmer. I think how we would deal with that is that we need to look at each other on an equal basis, because the knowledge that I have and the knowledge that you have, Paul, it knows no race, it knows no color, it knows no gender. Knowledge empowers everybody. So if we can do away with thinking that the knowledge that is found in a female versus the knowledge that is found in a male, there is really no difference. There's no difference in the code. That, for example, if I'm coding and you're coding, it's code. If a system needs to work a certain way, whether a female worked on it or a male worked on it, at the end of the day, it needs to work. So I think if we can do away with those type of stereotypes, I think that will do us a great deal as females, a lot.
Thank you, Natanda. Yeah, now I within a Pakistani cultural mindset, the mountains are maybe even higher than in many other parts of the world. What is your recipe? What is your recipe there?
I don't really have a recipe, but I think respecting one another for what we know rather than what our gender is something that has to start at the home and then in universities, and then it then transfers into the professional workplace, because these are biases you bring with you. If your upbringing is good, like I was brought up in a family where my parents said men and women are able to do anything that they want to do. It's just that you have to put enough effort into it. What I've seen some of the women that I work with complain about is that any women who join a tech company actually put in a lot more effort and do a lot better. And then this sort of creates some enmity with some of their male colleagues, because they don't want to put in that extra effort. And they say, why is this person trying to prove herself and making us look bad? And sometimes that happens. Although, a lot of men are very good at what they do and put in their 100% as well. But then there are some who are not. And I have heard women complain that I've joined this company and I'm in a minority. And because I'm trying to prove myself, there are many people in the team who are sort of grumbling and who are complaining that, she's just doing that to show off and to make us look bad. And that's not right. If you're working for a company, you want what's best for the company. And if you have brilliant women on your team who are able to contribute to the success of that company, treat them with the respect that they deserve. And anything that you produce in terms of a product that is put together by a diverse team, remember 50% of your customer base is also women. So you are looking at it then holistically, and you are creating a product that is available to everyone. So I don't think enough people think like that, because if a man develops a product, he may lose some of the experience that is required for a woman to actually like it. So let's look at it holistically, both from a male and female perspective, and create a product that is good for all.
Yeah.
Well, I think we just answered Saima Huma's question, which is all around how can we ensure inclusivity at the workplace. So thank you for proactively answering that question. Another one from Asher is around in terms of pay inequality. Is that a deterrent for barrier for entry for females in the tech industry? I see a big yes.
No, absolutely. And I think I see no reason why they should be paid any less. They should be paid according to the work they do. Why does it have to be dependent on gender? And also, yes, I understand that some of the women need flexibility, but the women that I have seen who stick to flexible hours actually start work earlier because they know they have to leave earlier. And then once they've settled their children at home, taken them home from school, they continue the work from home. And as we've seen in this period of COVID-19, work from home can be just as effective, if not more. So it's not that they don't do an equal amount of work. Sometimes they do more work than many of the people who are working in the offices. So I don't think that should not be a consideration.
Absolutely. The COVID has shown that work from home is actually has shown that flexibility is no excuse. It's all about deliverables, correct? Notando, any views around the pay inequality?
So I never really understand why women tend to get paid less than men, right? Um, and I remember reading an article saying about women get paid. If a woman is doing the very same thing that a male's doing, you'll find that a male gets actually paid 20% more. And I don't know if it's an issue in HR or where that actually comes from. I think it's really a deterrent, because if I'm in a specific role and I do the very same thing or even do more as a male, I don't understand why I should be paid less, because sometimes, as Janara is saying, we do more sometimes. Some of us like flexibility of coming in early and having to leave early and even continuing to do the work after that. So it's definitely something that I think globally it just needs to change, because it's a huge confidence blocker, if you know what I'm trying to say. Because if I'm doing the very same thing as my male counterpart, but I'm getting paid less for it, I think it really creates that uncomfortable situation where we as women sometimes need to constantly be playing catch up. I need to change jobs to try and jump my salary to move it to a certain amount. And when you get there, you find that, okay, I'm still being paid less. And, it's like we're constantly trying to play catch up. And it's really difficult. So it's definitely a problem that needs to be addressed globally.
And the excuse that you don't need as much money as men do is, I think that's rubbish. That is such rubbish.
No, especially because some of them will be like, but you have a partner, they'll cover the risk.
Oh, please send some names of those men to me, please. The HR person that says that to you, please send them to me. I will have a one-on-one conversation with them. I promise I will.
It actually happens, Paul.
I know it does. It's just anyway. I don't have right words to describe the feeling that I get by hearing those examples.
Yeah.
I'm just going through a couple of questions, and then we have to wrap it up because it's almost 45 minutes already. So we're doing well. Question from Asma is: how are women advancing in HR technology field in Pakistan, and what's the scope and where do they start? So how is there an HR technology? Is there a big HR technology field in Pakistan?
Well, there is not a big HR technology field, but there is an HR technology field. And especially with AI and machine learning, there are women who are also part of teams, who are partners with male colleagues who are working in this area, because it's now, HR used to be thought of as an expense. But now people have begun to understand that HR is actually a very important part of the company. And so using technology, whether it is to select, to interview, to make sure there are learning programs, all sorts of things, it's extremely important. So women are getting into that. I've seen some good companies that are led by a woman and a man as co-founders, but it's not big yet. It's not big, holistically, it's not big in Pakistan yet. But the number of women, they're beginning to increase, but they're not large in number yet.
Notando, is there a big industry in South Africa, the HR technology space?
So what I've started to notice is that there's a lot of now tech recruitment companies that are focusing on getting more women involved. So we have situations where companies are now hiring according to employment equity, where they want to make sure that there's a balance between females, there's a balance between certain races as well. So there's definitely it's a growing industry. There's a lot of focus now that is being put out there to find certain tech women leads, and I even myself get poached on a lot of them as well to sort of spearhead and help out in those areas as well. So, but I think what needs to happen is that a lot of women need to, come out of our shells. I mean, Janara did say that we don't necessarily put ourselves out there necessarily saying I'm good at this or I'm good at that, and I think that's why we do end up being invisible times. So it's always good to see that now with these type of recruitment companies that are actually actively looking for women that they can put in leadership positions, it's definitely something that is slowly growing. And I think from a South African perspective, I'm really appreciating to see that they are starting to identify women in tech that they can actually put in leadership positions.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We talked about inclusive workspaces. Obviously, the whole element around mindset and biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious one, is a big one, and that starts in the recruitment space, correct? Because I'm thinking about how some of the gamified recruitment solution that we've developed is also specifically aimed on trying to get those biases out. But because in that recruitment space, I think there's a lot of unconscious biases that are already happening. Yeah, the first thing they look at is the university, the gender, the GPA, and maybe the company that they worked for, and on that basis, you get an opportunity to get an interview. That's only the 4 data points that people look at. So how do you create? So one of the reasons that we started our HR technology is our gamified recruitment is to make sure is that you create a level playing field, like you said, Notando. That it is making sure that no matter the label that you carry, you do a number of assessments, and on that basis, you're going to be taken forward. And I think it's very important for companies to, from the start of the interaction all the way throughout, whether it's performance management, reward, we talked about pay inequality, we talked about leadership skills in terms of how you lead and how you create an inclusive mindset. To end on that one, a male first-line supervisor of a technology team, what would you advise him to do in order to create that inclusive team mindset?
Well,
what will be your bullet point?
To look at the people that he hires as actually programmers and not as women. And also, I think when you're testing them, when you're trying to recruit them, see how creative they are, because sometimes you will find that the women who apply for the job are much more creative, and you're losing out on good resources by keeping them out. So I would suggest just try not to have a bias. And and also in the HR recruitment team, there should be an equal number of men and women. Because if you have only men in the HR recruitment team, then you are likely to want to hire people like yourselves, right? And that's a bias that may be unconscious, as you said, Paul, but it does exist. We're all human beings. So maybe you're more comfortable hiring a man because you think it'll be less trouble, but you're losing out on a resource that could make your company great. And you shouldn't do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Notando, your advice to line managers?
My advice to line managers is that just because they want to empower us as women, they mustn't just hire us because they're trying to fill a space as well. Because I see that a lot where they're like, okay, in the team, we need a woman because we don't want to seem like we're biased. But then when the woman gets onto the team, you become the puppet master at the back, controlling the moves as well. So if line managers can hire us for our creativity, for our skills, and for our merit, that is a good step for us, because you don't want to be hired and someone says, okay, you're going to lead this specific team, but in the background, they're the ones puppet master, they're the ones who are stringing all the decisions. And you tend to then ask yourself, okay, then why was I hired? Was I just hired to fill in a quota? So I think if we can just genuinely hire women because they're creative, because it's of the great things that I can do and what I can actually bring onto the table, that is a good step into us actually having these inclusive workspaces.
In fact, it's disrespectful to hire them because you're trying to fulfill a balance, Yes. I don't want to be hired because you want a token woman on your team, right? So I want to be hired because I am the right person for the job.
Definitely.
So Notando, what's next for Tech in Heels? What is the inspiration?
So for Tech in Heels, it was more of trying to create a space for where we can help young girls be better equipped for the fourth industrial revolution. That's helping them with digital skills, and also having a softer side of having female mentors and coaching, so that we can actually not just only focus on the digital side of equipping women, but also having a safe space for women as well, because we share the same amounts of experiences, and how we've dealt with them. Sometimes we need to be able to have that space where we can actually talk about it freely and not be judged, and not be deemed as bitter women or whatever the situation is. So it was more important to not just create a space where we can help each other, share our experiences in terms of the types of skills that we have, but also to create a sisterhood, a sisterhood where we can get together and share one's experiences, help build each other. Because sometimes we do have women who are in the industry who have broken, the ceilings of the glass ceilings, and sometimes you just want to know that how were you able to get through that. And because we don't necessarily have a platform to do that, it was very important for me to have a space where women can actually have a platform to know that that type of experience that other women have. Yeah.
Well, I wish you tremendous amount of success in doing that, Notando. Janara, what is next for female incubators in the nest?
Oh, I think they are going to take over the universe, as far as I can see. They are, some of our alumni are actually creating their own opportunities for other women who haven't started companies of their own. And so you see that whatever you are giving them, they are trying to pay back by creating those kind of spaces themselves, or opportunities, not necessarily spaces. Because now with COVID, I think spaces are not what we should be talking about, but we should be talking about opportunities, the linkages, the mentoring. And I see them. They are giving back as much as they have received, sometimes even more. So they are super women, and it's important, because if younger women don't take over, then there is limited time for people like me who've been around to continue to contribute. It's these younger women who have fresh ideas, who have capabilities, who are able to do this. If all we do is support what they're doing and let them do it, it's going to change Pakistan from what it is today. It's getting better all the time, and I love this country, but there are problems that we have identified, and those problems need to be tackled so that all of Pakistan can grow together.
Awesome. Well, I would like to thank you for sharing that I have the opportunity with two superwomen to share this platform. Thank you very much. It is my duty now to make sure is that I get more. I've already told my head of product and the developer to get more females in his team, and through my recruitment tool that I get that bias out of the pre-selection of the applicants. So I will do my very little bit, but I'm counting on these two superwomen to really change the female leaders in tech landscape. Thank you very much for joining, and fantastic.
Nice to Notando. Let's keep in touch.
Yes, definitely, Janara.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.